We need new teachers. I think that's what's coming out of this, Fred, is we got to have new messengers for this work. It can't be up to people just that look like you. All eyes can't turn to you and say, Fred, what's the Black perspective on this? All eyes can't turn to me and say, well, what do women think about this, Jennifer? Yeah, we need more messengers and more challengers.
Welcome to Join the Convo. Today, we're speaking with Jennifer Brown, an award-winning diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant and author. Look, each of us is moving through a personal journey when it comes to understanding the role race plays in our lives. So we've invited Jennifer to break down the 4 stages of that journey for us: unaware, aware, active, and advocate. She describes this path in her book, How to Be an Inclusive Leader, and I hope that as she walks us through it, we'll get our heads around this journey we're all experiencing and pick up tips on how to learn more and take action. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Fred. Happy to be here.
Before we dig in, tell me a little bit about yourself, Jennifer, and how you found yourself where you are today as a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant.
It is a mouthful. I didn't even know the field existed. And I would say if you talk to people that do what I do, they would say the same thing, I think. And yet, like, once you find it, you hang on for dear life because it just feels like so in your purpose, right? But I was an activist in my 20s, so community organizer, grant writer, nonprofit gal. And I was also an opera singer and a singer in general. I had a cover band, I was a studio vocalist, and I had dreams of making my living as a performer. So I moved to New York, got my master's in voice in opera, which was incredible. Sadly, had to get some vocal surgery because I was, for whatever reason, just continued to injure myself in the course of training. And I literally, after a couple rounds of that, I realized this would not work. This is not going to work. My instrument's not going to have the stamina to do the work. 8 shows a week and all that, which is really intense. So I had to reinvent. And I, as a performer, we have tons of agility and resilience and creativity. And I followed some performers who went into this kind of field called training and development. And I was like, what's that? That's interesting. It's in the HR world. So it's basically like, teaching and learning, but for adults in the workplace and other places. Okay. And I just ended up loving it. And I got a second master's in organizational change and leadership here in New York. And I was sort of launched into the HR world. I had some internal roles, HR roles, heads of training and development, things like that. And then I was laid off and I thought, I think I want to work for myself. I think I need to be in the classroom and I need to be facilitating discussion and about leadership and about organizational change. And so I hung out my own shingle, started my company like 13, 14 years ago. But then like D&I, I'm LGBTQ, so I've been out since I was 22 and I'm in my 40s now. And I had always had it on the side and thought, I'm a leadership consultant, like this is my work. And then my identity's over here. But I started to get involved with the LGBTQ advocacy world for the workplace, meaning like how do employers extend their brand, extend their messaging, recruit LGBTQ people, make it comfortable for LGBTQ people to work there. And I had a front seat, 15, 20 years ago to that movement, the sort of early days of companies coming online and starting to really intentionally honor this particular community that I was a part of. And I finally sort of connected the dots and I said, wait a second, there's this thing called diversity and people get paid to do it. And there's something called a chief diversity officer. And maybe as a consultant, I could serve those people. Maybe I could hire those people to deliver our programs. And so one thing led to another. And I learned from some of the best that I was able to hire into my company and send out to deliver these programs. And I would sit in the back of the room and take copious notes and I remember saying to myself, am I ever going to be able to teach this myself? I didn't know because it wasn't my lived experience. I'm LGBTQ and I'm a woman, yes, but I am so privileged also because of other aspects of my identity that I thought, like so many people are thinking now, how will I ever be able to be a voice for this? The way I got there was really sort of backdoor, and now it's all we do. Like my firm now has 20 people in it. We are literally every given day, we're delivering programs like to companies, all kinds of industries, all kinds of groups. And it's just incredibly fulfilling to do that. It's such an honor to do this work.
What was your response when I know, because I know you, how you felt about the killing of George Floyd. But
Yeah.
on a professional level, someone who spends all of your time in diversity, equity, and inclusion, what did it feel like? Were you like, oh, now you guys, I've been trying to tell you this forever, and now you guys are calling me. But what was it like? Is your phone ringing off the hook?
Yes, off the hook. I think everybody who even like touches this work, their phone's off the hook too. I mean, literally, it's like there's not enough of us all of a sudden, which is great for really sad reasons, but great because COVID, I think a lot of us were worried this field would just get decimated, right? We thought that as business erodes and goes through something as painful as that, D&I is always the first to be cut. When things turn, it's viewed as a nice to have. It's viewed as discretionary instead of essential. And so this whole thing that's happened over the last month or two, it's incredible to be at the table and be desired, and actually have people get it maybe for the first time to say, oh my goodness, I didn't realize the problem was so bad. I mean, but I think that's ridiculous because we've been showing that the problem is really bad. So it's on a personal level, it's frustrating. I don't know what the word is. Am I smug? I'm kind of angry. I mean, I'm really angry that it took this long and it took a pandemic. It took, videos of police brutality and for us to actually see that and then therefore take this on in a real way. Like it's, yeah, I have a lot of emotions.
Many of us are new to social justice. Many of us are new to this topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion. In your book, you do a great job of basically you have a glossary at the end of the book, but you highlight some of these terms so that we can start to have a more informed vernacular as we're discussing this with our peers and our friends. But also in the book, you have an amazing framework of how someone goes from becoming unaware of inequities to becoming an advocate. So we'll use that A word because that's the word that we use in the book. I would love for you to just quickly, at a high level, walk us through the 4 stages that you outline in the book, and then we'll go a little bit deeper into each of those stages.
Basically, it's like, where am I today? And where then can I go from there? Because it's important to know where we are in order to take the right next step. We can't, my next step doesn't look like yours, doesn't look like somebody's who's never thought about this before. I would put that in unaware, because what you have to be aware of is good intentions don't mean impact.
Yes.
Seeing ourselves as good people is why we're here right now in this mess. It's that we have not acknowledged the work that we've got to do, and we haven't acknowledged how the systems have benefited some of us and not others. And we have sort of skated by, I think, and been comfortable and never questioned, who does this system not work for? And so that's, I think, the learning and the realizations that are happening right now. And it's very difficult. It's hard to sort of look at yourself critically and say, I thought I was doing enough by being just a well-meaning white progressive person. But that doesn't change systems. Just wanting systems to change, hope isn't a strategy, right? Wanting things to be equal does not make them so. And that's why when we differentiate between equality and equity, it's such an important distinction. Those are very similar words, but they mean totally different things. Equality is way out ahead of us. But equity is the strategy that we need to say, wait, why do we do things this way? Why is it like this? I want to know more. Tell me more. I want to sign up to change that. That's the equity piece. Unaware is all of that. And then we move into phase 2, which is aware, which is, okay, now I know what I don't know. And that can be overwhelming because it's just massive what I don't know. It's sort of, okay, now I need to expose myself. I've got to learn and listen to different media, podcasts, read books, not about my lived experience, but about others' lived experience. I need to investigate. Awareness of self too, like my own bias, noticing at every point in my day, because we are all biased. It's in the water. It's like how we're raised. It's the world we live in. All of us, not just people that look like me. I mean, it is literally in the human wiring.
But let's talk a little bit about bias real quick. So in our previous discussions, you mentioned unconscious bias, which is basically the umbrella phrase for different types of bias, right? And in your book, as I mentioned very handily, you define unconscious bias as social stereotypes or prejudices about certain groups that form outside your conscious awareness, yet still affect how you perceive those said groups. Can you talk a little bit about unconscious bias and how it shows up in our lives?
Yeah, we haven't been exposed to as much difference as we have needed to, right? So we have these sort of poorly informed opinions because of the lack of diversity of images in our media, because of the lack of those in our inner circles with certain lived experiences. The gay rights movement went forward, I think, for gay marriage in particular, because people knew that one gay person, right? And they said, wait a second, like, that's my friend, that's my coworker, that's my fellow church member. Like, I can't support that. And so, but absent that, we are sort of have these like random data points that are completely like incomplete. And then when somebody walks in, we're sort of going through those things unconsciously. And by the way, you know, you're going to notice as you build your awareness, those are still going to come up, and it's very hard to eradicate. And so we have to investigate those and sort of start to sort of see it, notice it, and then that's awareness. But then the next stage is active. So active is phase 3. So my active phase 3 is about activating your voice. It is I'd say it's a difficult phase. Aware was difficult because you learned everything you didn't know, and you're probably horrified, you're shamed, you're embarrassed, you have regret. I hope. I mean, if you have empathy in your soul and in your heart,
Anywhere in your soul, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at this stuff that you're learning and just saying, how could I have not known? I mean, I've seen leaders break down in tears over the last month just to say, I had no idea our Black employees felt this way.
If I had to just give a sense of where I think most people are, it's on that cusp of, they've been in the awareness stage for the past month or so, and they're moving into that active stage now.
I agree.
But it's been emotionally draining for minorities, non-minorities, everyone. I was just speaking with a friend of one of my best friends, and he's been mostly silent, but he says he's been internalizing and studying and watching and reading and listening. He hasn't come out publicly to say anything yet, but I can feel the weight, you know, the shame that you mentioned, just it can rock your world when you realize the world you've lived in for 30, 40 years is not what you thought it was, right? Because we as humans want to have full understanding of everything all the time.
So true.
When something like this, which is so present, you just said we're swimming in bias, for example. When you introduce that creates a lot of uneasiness. And so my good friend is going through that now. And I know he's going to figure out, he's finding his own voice. And you talk a lot about that in the book, finding your own voice. And he's on the cusp of moving into the active stage, which is
for
great.
him. So active, I want to say the phase 3 then is once you're ready, and you're never really ready. I mean, I almost think of it as sort of, you know, the mama bird pushing you out of the nest. You know, you may not feel like you can fly, but you got to start flying.
Yeah.
And you're going to fall off the bike many, many times before you can ride it. You got to get back on. And the active phase is experimentation. It's risk taking. It's, messing up and apologizing. It's asking for feedback around intent versus impact. Like, I intended this, but did I have the impact that I intended? So that calibration that we have to get very good at, which is and hopefully we have that kind of network of people who are giving us space and grace, right? Those people who are like, hey, understand your intent. This was great. This was not so great. Or here's what I would say differently next time. Or that was awesome. Keep going. Is the other kind of feedback a lot of people will need. And I know the other conundrum I sort of tension that I hold is, we don't want to cause more emotional labor by asking for feedback all the time. How am I doing? How was that? Is it okay? You know?
Right.
So I think we have to balance our need to be right and our need to do something perfectly. We have to challenge that big time right now, because we are going to be uncomfortable and imperfect for a long, maybe forever. So we got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable at the active stage, and we have to have that apology ready and give it freely. Like, don't get fragile about it. You know, if you haven't read Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility, read it and notice in yourself if your want to be perfect is preventing you from action. But if you're messing up is also your reaction to messing up, your reaction to saying that you didn't get something exactly right. If we go into fragility, we cry, we go into shame, we take our marbles and go home and say, I'm never going to do this again.
Right.
We
Which
don't
I think is where many people are now. And we're going to talk about that.
We need to talk about that.
A lot of the imperfection and pushback.
Yes. And like, I'd say, like, don't make perfect the enemy of the good right now.
I want to get to the last piece, and then we'll go a little bit deeper into stage one, which is unaware. But the last one, which is advocate, which is you've gone through active, and now you've found your voice. Well, I'll let you explain it.
Advocate is phase 4, which is literally, I am unafraid. I'm unapologetic. I am not waiting for permission. I have the muscle built and I can use it, and I know how to use it. I know how to wield my tools. And I think of advocate as sort of the instigator. It's the sand in the oyster. It's the, right? It's the irritant. It's like the challenge. It's the truth telling. It's the, if I'm a white man in a group of white men and we're talking about, like, who are we going to promote? I'm the one that's saying, this slate of candidates is not acceptable to me because there's no women on it, and there's no people of color on it, and there's no other diversity dimensions. Like, we go back to the drawing board. It's using that platform to agitate.
As you're talking about advocate, the energy even that you're using to describe advocate is one in which, I want to join. I want to become an advocate. And I think about, we've seen advocacy in many other arenas. I think about even the sustainability movement, where now you have people, let's say someone came to visit me in my home and I was drinking a LaCroix, like I have here, and I went to go put this LaCroix in the garbage bin. I've had many, not to say that I do this because now I recycle, but before I was aware, people would stop me mid-throw and say, wait, do you not recycle? And this is in my own home, right? So people have built that muscle to recognize something that goes against what they believe, interrupt me and tell me that I should recycle, and then I have the shame, et cetera, et cetera. But that's look, the planet's very important. So it's an important analogy, but we've seen advocacy in some other areas. But I find it hard to listen to your definition of advocate and not want to become an advocate, especially when it comes to diversity and inclusion.
We got to have new messengers for this work. It can't be up to people just that look like you. All eyes can't turn to you and say, Fred, what's the Black perspective on this? All eyes can't turn to me and say, well, what do women think about this, Jennifer? Yes, right. I want to be at the table and I want to be included and I want to be consulted. I don't want to be responsible for change. I want to be the one voice, and I want to advise. That's the right role, right? And I want to be at that table. That's critical. But we need more messengers and more challengers.
We are complex individuals, right? And I'm Black, I'm male, but I have thousands of other dimensions to myself. So I want you to touch on intersectionality a little bit and explain how powerful that is, and understanding how you approach other people who are not like you, or how you understand yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So intersectionality was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. So she's a Black woman professor. And originally it was meant to describe the overlapping stigmatized identities that some of us carry. We carry multiple stigmatized identities, and they sort of compound sometimes. And and it's important to be able to kind of understand how they overlapped, cause sort of overwhelm, and sort of derail our progress, I think, from the outside world. But that they're all very, like you just said, there's so many that are invisible as well. And so if I'm a Black queer woman, I walk in the room and I say, okay, so my Blackness is probably being noticed. Perhaps my identity as a female is something else I'm going to have to contend with, right? In this room where not a lot of people share my identity. But being LGBTQ, maybe that's something I'm not out about, because I'm already navigating the impact of my other identities. And I think that's to me how it shows up. And we're making choices all the time about how safe is this? How much of myself is going to be welcome and embraced and truly seen, heard, and valued, and making those decisions all the time about this hierarchy of who we are, which is ridiculous.
So all of us through looking at the intersectionality, the different dimensions that make us up, have some privilege, and we have some areas in which we're not privileged, right? And in the book, you say we need to leverage those areas in which we're privileged to help other people who are marginalized. Can you talk a little bit about that? And an example for all of, well, not all of us, but an example for those of us who live in the United States is we have being an American, that is privilege. We're one of the richest countries in the world relative to other countries. All of us have dimension.
Right. Yes, and I think privilege is not a binary. I might argue, if I can take a page from Kimberly Crenshaw without dishonoring her definition, it is, I include my privileged identities in an intersection of who I am. And so they're not good or bad, they're just there. It's a fact, and yet it's been weaponized. I think some people feel their privilege has been weaponized against them. And I think we need to redefine that and reframe privilege as simply the ease with which I might walk through the world, Fred, that you don't feel every day. The things the rooms I can get into, perhaps, not because of anything I did to earn being in those rooms, but just purely based on, the happenstance of my birth. And then realizing that with those things, which you didn't earn, by the way, they come with a certain level of opportunity and I think responsibility. That's my view. I was given these things for a reason, and I believe that I need to activate around the aspects of comfort that I have. That's what the big opportunity is, for us to literally activate those pieces and have the conversations, speak the truth, challenge things, because the messenger matters as much as the message in this work. We need more messengers that look different and perhaps unpredictable, right? You don't expect a straight white male executive to stand up and say, I want to talk about what diversity means to me on a personal level. You don't see, and it's such a shame, it's such a missed opportunity, and it's why we're not making more progress. Because if we saw that, and that's privilege, certain kinds of privilege, standing up and saying, here's what my diversity dimensions are, here's what I can do easier or with less risk, and here's why I'm going to stand up and talk about this, because I can. And I know that I will be listened to differently because of this package I'm in, which, by the way, I didn't earn this, I didn't choose it, but it is what I'm in, and therefore I'm going to use it. Like, I just wish leaders need to build that fluency to be able to stand up and do that. And, but you're right. Privilege is anything that makes your life easier. I mean, you're a tall man. There's height privilege. There's pretty privilege. There's, there's in the LGBTQ community, we talk a lot about gender identity privilege, or gender expression privilege rather. Like, I have passing privilege, which means that I can pass as heterosexual. So I can walk through my life and a hate crime isn't going to happen to me. And by the way, my intersectionality means that I'm LGBTQ, but I'm white. So my LGBTQ identity is in a way protected by the other levels of identity that I have, which meant that I'm not a Black trans woman whose life is literally in danger every single day. And we're in the same community of the alphabet soup of LGBTQ, the rainbow family. But the privilege within just that community, right? When we think about, if I'm a gay, white, cisgender man, I have male privilege and I have white privilege still, although I'm in a marginalized identity. So I like to say, just because you've had an experience of being in a marginalized community does not make you good at this stuff. It gives you maybe a head start. It gives you a palette to work with a couple colors on it of paint, but you've got to earn, like, the rest of it. Like, you've got to unpack and think about, like, I need allies, and this is my marginalized identity where I need, like, accomplices, but then I can be more of an accomplice based on whatever privileges I have. I can use that voice more. And I think it's so powerful, actually, to do it from a place of a marginalized identity. I think it's a gorgeous thing to say, I'm LGBTQ and I am an aspiring ally. And every day I work to, and people are like, what? Wait, don't we just need allies? And I'm like, no, you need to be an ally also. You need to activate around all these other pieces that are being underutilized, because people are suffering and you're not utilizing something that you have within your capacity. So this is not kind of hard stuff. You can actually, it's easier for me. It's much less risky for me to have that conversation than it might be for you, Fred. And so you and I are conspiring as accomplices. I say, let me take that one. Let me take that one for you. Let me go have that conversation for you. Let me bring that up in the next meeting we're in together, where somebody speaks over you or somebody steals your idea or somebody, and by the way, you're a man, you can be my accomplice and say, Jennifer, that wasn't cool. So I'm going to do something about that, right? So we can have this kind of 360-degree relationship.
It's one of the biggest things I want everyone to take out of this, is that from a privilege, yes, we talk about white privilege, and it's in some ways we weaponize that statement. But when you look at privilege, everyone should understand that everybody has privilege to some extent. And so we as individuals need to take an assessment of where do we have privilege, where are we marginalized? And just as you're saying, we can leverage our privilege to help other people who are marginalized. I'm a male, you're a female. I can help pull you up or advocate for you or be an ally for you. I'm Black, you're white, you can help advocate for me. I mean, that's the thinking I want. So we as Black people, I can speak to Black people, need to understand that yes, white privilege exists, but we also have privilege in our makeup. And so we should help other people. Sometimes it could be helping white people. A white person may want to become an ally, but they're not accepted amongst our Black friends. We need to be an ally in our Black community to say, no, listen to what the person has to say. Their intent is right. We need them as an ally if change is going to happen. That's one of the biggest messages I'd love to express to the Black community. Of course, we've had 400 years of oppression, et cetera, but at some point we have to show grace and understand that we have tools as well to help things move forward. And speaking of moving forward, I want us to get to the next stage, which is active.
This is where our colleagues need to hold the space for us to fall on something gentle so that we don't get hurt when we fall. And we have to provide that net for each other. You can't learn if you're afraid that when you fall, you're going to get super hurt. Like you wear shin guards when you're trying to learn how to ride the bike, so you don't break anything as you fall off a million times before you learn. We need to be the shin guards for each other. One thing I want to talk about is centering and decentering. It's a concept we talk about a lot. Centering yourself means you're activating to be the squeaky wheel, right? It might mean you're that white male executive stepping forward and saying, I'm going to talk about what diversity means to me. You are centering yourself, and you got to know that's powerful, because that's a new voice. That's somebody we don't expect. So but decentering yourself is something we also have to be able to do in active, which is to say, I've learned that I can step off of my platform and give my platform to somebody else whose lived experience needs to be heard and understood. I'll do that all the time on panels. I'll say, you don't need me on this panel. You need this person on this, or this kind of person on this panel. Like, let me suggest someone who can speak from a lived experience who is not heard and seen in our society. There's a million of me.
One of the great tools on that point that you have in the book is this tech bingo card, right? And I think it's a very tangible example of there's about 25 different things on this bingo card that show examples of what it looks like to be active in the moment. And some examples, and this is in the tech, or this is in the creative world. This was created for
everywhere.
Yeah, but it applies everywhere. I mean, we should create one of these bingo cards for this movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. We could talk about that. Yeah, I think that'd be great. Yes. Yeah, I think that'd be great. But, for example, conferencer, the example you gave, I speak at and attend only conferences with at least 20% female speakers. Photographer, I call out sexist imagery in campaigns at my agency. The wordsmith, I amend our creative brief to include a commitment to be respectful of women. Referee, I discipline or fire employees who abuse privilege. Protector, I speak up when I see discrimination or exclusion. I mean, I love this. We need more of this, right? This is action oriented. It's tangible. Another topic that you discuss is the power of individuality, and how many of us feel as though we are overwhelmed with the enormity of this movement and inequities, and we can't do anything about it. Therefore, we're not going to do anything about it. But what you say is, no, that's not right. We have the power in a small way to impact those who are around us. If more people just took that approach, then you're going to have big impact.
So I want to make a point, Fred, that you've never arrived. You have not ever completed. There's a million things ways that on my own model that I created that I'm literally in like unaware and aware. Like there's so many things I have to learn about different communities in order to make sure I'm an effective accomplice someday. But I'm in the early stages of that journey. So I really want to make that clear too to the listeners, that you can be like simultaneously in so many different places, and that's okay. Not only okay, I mean, that's normal. I mean, maybe you choose to focus on one identity for a year, and you just become, I'm gonna like push hard and deep into this one identity, and maybe you choose one per year. I mean, we advocate that executives that we work with rotate through the being an executive sponsor of all the different identity groups, so that they have that up close and personal storytelling that we were talking about. Yeah. And in a perfect world, each white male cisgender leader, if that's what dominates your leadership, spends 2 years. I mean, in fact, I can think of one company that actually does that, and it's transformative. There's nothing that can replace that in terms of accelerating our journey.
Just explain to me what it's like to move from, what the difference is between being active and being an advocate. So what changes? Both of them are public. Both of them, you're interrupting other people. You are a voice. But what would you say is the distinction?
I mean, it's the kicking off of the training wheels. It's the wobbly no more. It's the certainty that comes from knowledge and practice. The knowledge of phase 2 and the practice of phase 3. It's the lack of fear, and also having seen how things go enough so that you have the context now. Like, so when I use the bingo card example, like when I push back on XYZ, here are the reactions I get, right? And I've seen that here and here and here and here. So now I can predict it. And then I can get even smarter about how I wield my change tools, right? So in active, it's experimental. We don't know how people are going to respond. And if they respond aggressively, we may not have the resilience to respond, right? We haven't built that up yet. And so I think in an advocate level 4, it's like, you're ready. You know exactly what people are going to say. You're ready with another response. You're unafraid to kind of persist and sort of dig in. You're not afraid of the consequences. I'm not asking for permission. I'm just going forward and doing what I know is right, because the only way you can know what is right is as a product of educating yourself in phase 2, and activating in phase 3, where you're like, okay, this is how it goes. When I say this in this room, this happens. So how am I not going to let that torpedo progress? How am I going to go this way? How am I going to go that way? I feel like at Advocate, we can get creative. We have this kind of bird's eye view now. We've got the muscle, we've got the knowledge, we've got the courage. We are a truth teller and a truth seeker, and we're not afraid to ask why. And I also think we move out of our own personal journey to looking at sort of the world around us and noticing who else is early in their journey. How do we pull people forward? When we're at advocate level, those are mentoring, those are critical role models and mentoring. And we have to be thinking about, what held me back in my journey? How can I remove obstacles so that people will progress more quickly and accelerate this progress? I'm thinking about the system and organizational change and individual change and mindsets and behaviors. And, I think you become, through this process, a student of this stuff. And you were the original student, but the student becomes the teacher. Always, right? Not always, but you become, by the way, you gotta handle the attacks. You've got to be the tip of that spear, and you're going to get a lot of headwinds, and you got to be really strong to get those, and they will come at you, and you got to do the right thing with those, and just kind of, shrug it off, listen, move forward, go through, keep going. Like that strength of, I don't know, I don't want to call it armor, because I don't love that too much. But I guess I've got, I mean, if we could say armor in a really good way, maybe it's more of like a membrane, like something that like makes us like sort of a force field that makes us really strong and very certain in our approach, to say, no, this is the right thing. I know it. I believe it. I've seen it to be true. I can quantify it with data. I've done my homework. I can sit here and anything you throw at me, I can tackle.
I know that you have a 6-week course on diversity and inclusion. Can you touch on that real quick? And you have a lot of great resources. I took your assessment on where I stand in the spectrum right now, and I love the output of that and how it has different dimensions and it shows me where I am. I'm an advocate in some areas. I'm active in some areas. I'm aware in other areas. So I love that. But talk to me about the 6-week, because I think some people are going to listen to this and say, I just need to like immerse myself or my boss in a course that's structured so we can come out knowing that we are ready. We are active. We can become active. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So we have a free assessment on jenniferbrownspeaks.com. So if you look up in the menu, you'll see assessment. It takes 10 minutes. And that's what Fred's talking about, where you get a report and sort of a bird's eye view of where you are. I mean, it's not perfect, whatever, it's complex, but I think a starting place is good, and resources, podcasts to listen to, et cetera. And then the 6-week courses, we're probably doing another cohort in the fall of 2020. So if you're interested in getting on our mailing list to find out when we launch with the details and stuff, I think the best way is to text us actually at 55444 and text all one word, text DEI Foundations to 55444, DEI Foundations, 55444. Then we'll get on the list, and then we'll actually also text you some links to some other things we're up to, which you probably would want to know. Like you could come on our community calls, which we have every Thursday, which are awesome, really wonderful learning, my podcast. They're amazing. So, just get into like the JBC family, I would say, and get on our list so that you can, up your learning over the summer. And then the course will run in the fall. And we're really excited about that. What I would recommend anyway, in addition to all the reading you're doing and the viewing, if you can have me in your ears, if you can hear the podcast guests that I have on who are brilliant, who are writing books, it's my podcast numbers, by the way, Fred, have like doubled in a month and a half, our downloads. So it's been incredible that people are seeking, like just to get exposed. And they're all in that level too. You can feel it. They're like, oh, I just need to hear more and I can't get enough. And I'm so heartened by that. Like, it's really incredible.
And no matter what it took for us to get here as a society, we're here now.
Thank goodness.
And I know both you and I are optimistic of the future. And it's very likely that we're going to see permanent change from this movement that we're going through now. So Jennifer, with that, I thank you for all the work you've done, committing your life to making the world more equitable for everybody. I thank you for your time. I know, as you said, your phone's ringing off the hook, so I appreciate you spending the time with me today. And we will share all of the resources that you listed on our website and our Instagram page for everyone to check out. So Jennifer, thank you once again. And I look forward to having you and I continue this discussion in the future.
Yes, and creating that bingo card.
Yes, and we're going to work on that bingo card.
Work on that. Stay tuned. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Join the Convo. We learned so much from Jennifer Brown. I just wanted to quickly walk through the 4 stages of her framework once again. Remember, it's unaware, aware, active, and advocate. Take some time, think about where you are on the spectrum. It doesn't matter where you are. Even if you're still in unaware, that's fine. And remember, unaware is you're still figuring out if there's a problem or not. Aware is where you're gathering information, reading books, watching movies, talking to friends. This is where a lot of us have spent the last few months. Active is like you're on the fence. If you're in an uncomfortable situation, you're on the fence figuring out, am I going to say something? Am I not going to say something? This is where you take that step forward and you say something. You may not say the right thing. You're not sure what someone's going to say, but this is where we get that practice, right? And then that moves us into that advocate stage where we've done all of that work in the active stage. We know what's going to come our way. We're confident. If we're in an uncomfortable situation, suppose we're at a table that just doesn't have representation, this is where we can speak out and say, I don't understand why there isn't fair representation. Remember, centering and decentering, we may even step away and give our seat at that table to somebody else. I mean, that's all the work that we do as an advocate, and that's where change happens. But no matter where you are, we're all good. You may spend the next year in that active stage, it doesn't matter. I want to thank you once again for joining us today. I can't wait for the next episode. So excited. We're going to be interviewing Nate Hibble, another guest from the Join the Convo Town Hall. Good friend of mine, owner of Gusto Restaurants in Atlanta, Georgia, and he's a white male. So he's going to talk to us about what's going on in his world. He has a heart for equality, and so he's going to talk from the heart on this next episode. If you enjoyed this episode today, we'd love to keep in touch with you. The best way to do that is to follow us on Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and visit our website, jointheconvo.co, where you can give us your email address, and we'll keep you up to date on new episodes and all the exciting things we have going on. That's it for now, guys. Till next time, we'll see you.